Yeah, testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. That would make sense. Yep. So Wes,
move like moonlight, bamboo, bird fly. She's speaking love song, sweet magnolia, dove song.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
I'm stepping over your mic.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Yep. So we're gonna be live in a second. So we have our two candidates here. We'll do a coin toss, move forward with the game plan. I'm gonna just remind the audience, hundreds of text messages went out. Many people are getting on the YouTube stream. The 8 was the count just right at 10 o'clock, and then it's going up now. Remind folks, cell phones probably should be off. You know, if you don't know how to put it on silent. And then Bathroom is downstairs and to the left over there. We're gonna try to avoid getting up. If you want to be in camera, you can get up and get in front of it, but we're not gonna do that. And then the priority is going to be the questions from. The priority will be the questions from the online form. We emailed that out a few times over the last month or so. We will have time possibly for questions from the audience, and then we'll have time to also go on YouTube and check those comments and questions. We're going to also encourage both candidates to go on YouTube later, and you can answer those questions. Answer questions from those people also. We're going to keep posting that video over and over again between now and April 2nd. So you can vote just by calling 286 VOTE, and then also get over to 60th and Capitol, vote early, get an absentee ballot, or just vote on April 2nd. So let's do a coin toss. Wes, how's this mic?
We're good.
Okay, I think we're all good. And then I'll do my little coin toss.
Okay.
Heads or tails?
Heads.
Okay, heads. Okay. So it is heads. Do you want to go first or second?
I'll go first.
Got it. Cool. And then we'll just have a seat. I'll speak, introduce you all, and then you'll be first for your introduction.
Perfect. You want us to start sitting, standing?
On your
what?
timekeeper.
Okay, perfect. I'm that way. Okay.
Ready?
Yeah, give it a shot.
All right, cool. So, welcome to Milwaukee's 10th District Aldermanic Forum. This is sponsored by the Washington Park Media Center and the Martin Drive Neighborhood Association. Like we do at neighborhood meetings, I will introduce myself and where I live. My name is Raymond Duncan, and I live on 43rd Street. My favorite thing about living in the Martin Drive neighborhood is our community. One of the first things I noticed when I moved here was the neighborhood-wide rummage sale. Since that day, I have realized all of the events and projects neighbors and community partners help with. They included community garden, nighttime trick-or-treating, holiday caroling, red bowls on all the trees in winter, neighborhood-wide picnic, block parties, game nights, outdoor movies, and curb appeal projects. Now, in a moment, you both will have 5 minutes to introduce yourself. This will be followed by 2-minute question responses from me. Now, if we have time, we will go to our chat box and take your live questions. And then we would have possibly a few questions from the audience. Now, our priority is those online questions, just in case we have neighbors who work different hours. They may be watching this at night, in the daytime. They have pretty busy schedules. Now, we're also going to invite both candidates to get on the chat box later and help answer those questions. Now, Charlene, you're going to go first. Please introduce yourself.
Absolutely. Good morning for some of you that may be watching this later on. Good afternoon, good evening, good night. My name is Charlene Moore, and I am running for 10th District, the 10th District Aldermanic race. And I just want to thank the Martin Drive and their leaders for setting up this candidate forum this morning. So just a little bit about myself. I was born and raised in Jamaica. I moved to the States when I was just 6 years old. And as I grew up in this city, I remember the neighborhood. I grew up in the Sherman Park neighborhood, and I remember a sense of community. As I grew up, there were certain things that happened. When the street lights went on, guess what? You knew you had to find your way home. I knew everyone when I was a young person. We knew everybody on our block. It was just a sense of community. And that was one thing that I loved about our city. We just knew each other. I remember one day when I was walking to school, I ended up picking somebody's flowers. And guess what? By the time I got home, my mama knew about it because I have no idea who told her that I picked a neighbor's flowers, right? It wasn't even near her house, right? And so but it showed me that, you know what, people were still watching out and looking out, right? And so it taught me a valuable lesson. Number one, don't pick anybody's flowers. But number two, that if I veered off, that there were people there to support me, right? And so it was one of the things that I loved. About 7 years ago, I moved to the Merrill Park neighborhood. And one of the things that I love about my neighborhood is that, so you talked about the things that you loved about being on Martin Drive. One of the things I loved about Merrill Park was, just having a diverse community. I love, seeing different neighbors going out. I regularly go out and just pick up just to connect with people. It's not to be like, oh, you should, none of that. It was just really connecting with people. And as I realized that there wasn't a formal neighborhood group in Merrill Park, I wanted to start that. So that's how I got an opportunity just organically to build community with my neighbors. Little short background on myself. I started a nonprofit organization called Urban Underground. I co-founded the organization with my husband, Reggie Moore, who used to run the Office of Violence Prevention and now is doing violence prevention work with the Medical College of Wisconsin. And Urban Underground is a grassroots youth leadership organization. I have one of my alum that's here, that's behind the cameras. And, I have a lot of our alum that are doing amazing things throughout the city. It's so funny because I tell them that I'm now following in their footsteps. We had a lot of leaders, young leaders that just happened to go into office, but our young people are doing incredible work, not only locally here in the city, but across the country. And so I'm honored to be in this place. I've been a public servant, I would say, for most of my life. I love building community. I love connecting with people. I don't call myself an expert in a way that I know everything, because I don't. That's one of the beautiful things about coming into this position, because it's not about me. It's about how can I support and better support my community? What are some things that I can do to bring people in, to not just look at this as a divided, city, but that we have different things that we can be proud of, but there's so many great things that bring us together. And that's one of the things that I'm looking to bring into this position, to bring our communities and our neighborhoods together. So I'm honored to be able to run and to be able to be in this position to be able to support and give back to community with this next level and next phase of my life. So thank you.
Okay, Richard?
Richard Gelden. I grew up in this neighborhood. I was born and raised on the other side of Washington Park. I learned how to swim at Washington Park Pool. I worked, my first job was at Washington Park Pool. And when there used to be winter ice skating, I worked as a skate guard at Washington Park. I'm retired from the city of Milwaukee for 34 years of service. I've been removed from city service now for 10 years. My first apartment was on Highland Boulevard, just down the street. There used to be a fire station on Vliet Street where I used to register my bicycle. And next to the fire station was a pharmacy where you could get ice cream at the fountain inside the pharmacy. This is my playground. This is where I used to play as a young boy. I stayed in this part of Milwaukee. It used to be the 16th district. Now it's the 10th district. My city employee service, I worked during snow emergencies when declared by the mayor, I was a supervisor for snow plowing duties. I did that for 12 years. I worked out of the Central down here on Vliet Street. Otherwise, I worked out of the City Hall complex in the water department. I've been a homeowner now for 40 years. In the same home, my only home I have bought, raised my family, retired. I did not move when residency was lifted. I stayed. My son lives in the city. When I look across the street, I was thinking of all these memories of all the people that I used to play with when the zoo was there. I made many suggestions throughout my years of service. I've lived under 6 mayors, and I worked under 4 mayors, 4 different budgets as a city employee. I've seen many changes. The city budget is out of control, and we have a new sales tax. My emphasis is to use the excess money from the sales tax to reduce the fees on our water bill. I'm close to $600 on my water bill to pay my fees in addition to my property tax. We have the highest sales tax in the state of Wisconsin. I would like to see that reversed to make it affordable. There's a community called Hillard on 6th Street between North Avenue and Brown Street. It's a subdivision development that was built by African Americans. About 6 years ago, they were complaining about their property taxes getting too high, and they were asking for help. The Milwaukee Foundation stepped in and contributed $300 one time a year to help reduce their taxes. That was five years ago. Within the last 5 years, our fees on our bill have gone up. When I was going around getting signatures, the main complaint of people was the fees on the bill. That's why I'm running. I want to be able to stay in my home on a fixed income. And a lot of my neighbors are retired. And they've told me they could move and find a lower place to live outside of Milwaukee. I don't want people to leave. My neighbors are retired, like I am. And that's why I'm running. I want to stay in my home. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And the first question, I talked a few minutes ago about community, the projects that Martin Drive does. Some communities in the 10th district do better than others. So what would you do as alderman or the alderperson as helping to foster a community?
Absolutely. It's a great question and something that I've been thinking about what that looks like. So District 10 has 22 neighborhoods. And I haven't been able to get to every single last one of them, but I plan to make sure that I'm connected with every single neighborhoods. The interesting thing about District 10 is that we have a very diverse district. It's very different than some of the other districts in the city of Milwaukee. When you look at socioeconomic backgrounds of individuals, when you look at the demographics as far as race, we have it all. And that's the beautiful thing about District 10. However, when we look at particular district, there's some districts that are very engaged, do very well. They, have neighborhood events, throughout the year. And there's some districts that don't. Some districts that get a lot of attention, some districts that don't. One of the things that I want to do to unify that is because I've talked to a lot of different people as I've been doing doors in the neighborhood is, more so around, well, we feel like we've been forgotten. And I don't want anybody in the neighborhood to feel like they've been forgotten, and because they didn't live in a particular neighborhood, they don't count or they don't matter. And so one of the things that I plan to institute is a district-wide leadership group that comprises of different, residents from the different neighborhoods that will get together regularly, whether it's, and again, they will help lead this, what that looks like, but we'll get together maybe quarterly or every other month throughout the entire throughout the year. And in that way, we can start talking about and bridging the divide. What are the issues that we're dealing with? What are the similarities? What are the differences? What are the needs? If I don't go back and ask the people, what is it that you want? And I make an assumption that I know what it is that you want, I've done the residents of District 10 a disservice. So one of the main things that we have to do is we have to figure out better ways to bring people together. There's a lot more things that unite us than it does that divide us. So I think we have to have some sort of infrastructure and platform where we can feel comfortable getting together, talking about those issues, and looking at solutions. I'm not looking to go into City Hall to be the one that, or to tell you, yep, I'm going to get it all done. I am one of 15 votes. Okay, so I have to make sure that my colleagues are also in line or educated about the issues that our district is facing. But it's building those relationships with folks. And the last thing that I'll say is also communication. It's important that we have a platform that folks can receive and give communication. So I need to make sure that I'm using all levels, whether it's electronic, whether it's phone calls, letters, whatever, you name it, social media. I need to make sure that constituents know how to get information and how to give information. Thank you.
Okay, Richard?
In my boyhood home, there were 3 churches that are now gone. There's not a city block in my neighborhood that's vacant where houses were torn down. renters coming in. That's what destroyed the neighborhood where I lived in, was houses that were rented out to absentee landlords. Habit for Humanity is a great program. I support that program. The city of Milwaukee did make some funding a few years ago to support Habitat for Humanity for single homes, to be a home buyer, to be engaged in your neighborhood. We need more people to live in a city in their own homes. I'm not in favor of multi-unit buildings. I want people to have their own home, a place where they can call their castle, to stay where they are. But if you look on the other side of Washington Park, you'll see a lot of vacant land. And I was thinking about Garfield Avenue, where I used to play a lot. You can go from 27th Street to Sherman Boulevard. Every corner had a major crime. And that was, in the Milwaukee Journal did a study a few years ago, and they had a write-up about Garfield Avenue. Crime's a major issue of people that used to live in my neighborhood. The current Alderman Murphy reopened the old 3rd District for a police training academy to try and show a presence of police officers in the neighborhood. The new sales tax is mandatory us to have more police officers on the city payroll. We need more police protection. Major crime has been happening at Washington Park, where a girl was murdered by teenage boys. There was another person who had a shooting and killed, and he was just sentenced to prison. When I played in Washington Park, there was no crime like that. There's been a big change, and I believe it's because of the housing issue. There's too many duplexes that are rented out. And getting back to churches, where are they? People aren't engaged to be in there. That's how you bring a community together, if you belong to a church or a place of worship. Thank you.
Okay, Gary, Richard, this question is for you. So Gary online, he had a question. He talks about the MPS referendum. He talks about what do you think about it? How would you support or not support that issue?
My wife and I sent our children to Niscara Public School right around the corner. They stayed until 3rd grade. After that, my wife wanted a Christian education, so we sent our children to our church school. My granddaughter attends MPS. That was my son's choice and his wife. It's a choice. Currently, there are about 58,000 students in MPS. 10 years ago, there were 90,000. Dr. Howard Fuller, former MPS leader, has a charter school. I believe in choice. It's up to each individual family how they want to raise their children with education. If you go into the military, you'll get a GI Bill. And with that GI Bill, you can go to any education place that you would want to, private or public. It should be the same for your child. What's best for you, where you live, where you want to send your children to get an education. And I am against the referendum. As I said before, we have a new sales tax that's trying to help people stay in their home. The governor just vetoed a tax cut, income tax cut for retirees and working families. The state has a surplus, $8 billion. Working families need help, and that could afford them to go where they want to go for education. And that would get tied into tax increment funding, where the city subsidizes building projects where the payment of school tax, city tax, county tax can be stretched out for 40 years before it goes back to paying a school tax. Funding is an issue, yes, I understand that. But the city of Milwaukee, we're at the bottom of the ladder. And I'm against the referendum.
Charlene?
Thank you so much for that question. I hate that we even have to talk about public education having to go to a referendum. I hate that we're having this conversation, and it's not just Milwaukee public schools. It's schools across the state that, some of them are now, I just saw an article that have to close their doors. Public education is one of those opportunities that my opponent talked about, choice. That's great that we have a choice. But if our state, He talked about the surplus at the state level. If our state gave back what we needed, we wouldn't be having this conversation. What I'm talking about is let fair be fair, right? When we talk about educating our children, I believe that every child has should have the opportunity to a quality education, no matter what neighborhood you live in, no matter what part of the state you live in. You should have, every child should have the opportunity to a quality education. And unfortunately, in this city, that is not the case. My children went to Highland Community School, which was a charter, non-instrumentality charter school that was a part of MPS. They then went on to graduate from Rufus King. I have one left that's graduating from Rufus King High School. I'm a product of Milwaukee Public School. My family is a product of Milwaukee Public School. Our education system needs to be taken seriously, and our state needs to give Milwaukee its due share. And so, unfortunately, again, we're talking about a referendum that shouldn't even have to happen if the state was providing our city with the necessary funds and infrastructure. So yes, I do support the referendum. I do support our children, getting the things that they need so that school services do not have to be cut.
Okay. Charlene, this next question is for you. So in Washington Park, businesses like the West Vliet Street Business Association and other areas of the district have improved when it comes to their growth. This business, the business across the street, and other examples I just gave. So how would you, as Alderperson, how would you make sure the growth happens in the district so it's just not just centered downtown?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was just at community brainstorming, and one of the questions that I had was centered around, like economic development coming into the city. And I said, you know what? Yes, we definitely got to look at growth, but at the same time, we also have to look at the businesses that are currently here. What are we doing to support the growth and development of our small businesses that are currently here in, again, looking at our districts? It's so important that we make sure that businesses are having livable wage paying jobs. They're keeping their establishments, both inside and outside, clean. A neighbor just, talked to me about, what do you think about littering? Particularly when it came to businesses, right? Businesses have to be responsible for keeping their area, again, inside and outside clean. So when we talk about development and growth, we really need to hunker down and focus. How do we support those current businesses that are there? And those that, and again, having conversations with those that are not doing well, making sure that they support, they have the infrastructure and support that they need, because it's hard being a small business. We had probably a few blocks down, we had a restaurant that was in the neighborhood that I, went to, several times. I had meetings there several times, and now their doors are closed, right? And so what is it? And it's hard being a small business. It is difficult, especially, in this city, right? So what are the infrastructure and what are the tools that we need to have to make sure that we're supporting small businesses before we even talk about, how do we grow our city? How do we, grow our businesses? Let's also focus on the businesses that are currently here.
Okay, Richard?
When I was growing up, I can remember there was 2 George Webb's, a pharmacy just down the road from here, a bowling alley, 3 bowling alleys, Boulevard Inn restaurant, where we used to watch the chauffeur cars come up, where now it's the Washington Park Library. There was lots of small business, there's small restaurants, Murphy's restaurant. There were so many places we went, they're all gone. J.C. Penney's used to be on 35th and North Avenue. J.C. Penney's, Woolworths, Ben Franklin, Greeby's Bakery. All gone. Sears Roebuck, Fond du Lac and North. Shopped there a lot with my parents, where the guy would be up on the roof with a microphone telling you where to park your car. We have Amazon destroying business all over the place. Everybody, I'm sure everybody's order from Amazon. It's hard to compete. That's called capitalism. People will figure it out. If they're going to keep asking for this city of Milwaukee for help, it's not going to work. You can go back to Frank Zeiler, the mayor of Milwaukee, read his book. He kept complaining about companies and businesses coming to him for a handout. That was back in the 1950s. The 30th Street corridor, the big development that was supposed to be by the old A.O. Smith complex, where there used to be 10,000 workers. 30th Street corridor, that was supposed to be a big economic industrial park. Nothing's moved in. Master Lock is closing. The city poured a lot of money into A.O. Smith. I pulled out all the water service out of that company. I had 2 relatives that worked there. One who was killed crossing the street on 35th Street, leaving his second shift. Milwaukee tried to give away free water 10 years ago to companies to come into Milwaukee. No offers. Public Service Commission authorized it. They came back 1 year later and modified the free water concept. Still, no companies wanted to come in. The main complaint was they felt that the crime issue was a problem to have employees come in. We have a lot of development in downtown Milwaukee, a lot of subsidized development, TIFs, where the city's borrowing money, giving it to these corporations, bring their employees down, everybody claps their hands. Do I see anybody moving around here from Milwaukee Tool? I don't see any of these employees downtown coming into the neighborhoods. They're in those big high-rises. You know what's going to happen. They'll get married, have children, and they'll move out. It'll be a cycle. Thank you.
Okay. So, Richard, this next question's from you. Think about me. My mom taught me how to look both ways before you cross the street. And then now as a driver in the car, I look both ways before I go across the intersection. So think about reckless driving. We've seen some solutions from the city. We're also moving into a new year. It is going to get nice and warm outside, hopefully soon. Think about, Richard, what do you plan to do to solve the problem? Reckless driving.
It's all of us is going to have to. We have a voting coming up. There are judges that are running for office. You're going to have to find out who these judges are and what they would do to punish. As a city alderman, I cannot punish anybody for a crime. As I said before, I grew up in this neighborhood. McDonald's used to be on 35th and Juneau, when it used to be a walk-up window. We'd ride our bikes down 35th Street. Skateboarding was a big thing in the mid-1960s. Used to skateboard around here. We didn't have to worry about cars. Didn't have to worry about cars. Enforcement, where's the enforcement? 12 years ago, when we had Sheriff Clark running the county sheriff department, he sent county sheriffs into the neighborhoods for traffic control. Traffic was reduced. Traffic violations were reduced. Then there was a lot of pushback from the mayor at the time. That program was eliminated by the county sheriff. Traffic violations have gone up. There used to be enforcement on the part of the Milwaukee Police Department. I knew traffic officers that were part of that traffic detail. They were scaled back. Why? No money? Budget? City budget? That's what I'm running. As I said before, I lived under 6 mayors and I worked under 4 mayors. When I started my employment with the city of Milwaukee, it was fantastic. Never felt unsafe. Everything changed. Mid-1990s. We were warned as city employees, when you're driving your truck around the city, to watch out. People would purposely walk in front of you so you'd hit them so they could sue the city of Milwaukee. Why? I don't know. But if we have judges who will punish traffic violators, that would be a #1 step. And also the city just received $250,000 from these electric motorbikes that are going around the city. That was part of the agreement. They're going to give us $250,000. That money is going to be used for more of these bike lanes and bump outs. That's a start. Thank you.
Okay, Charlene.
Yeah. So reckless driving didn't start overnight. We didn't wake up one day and all of a sudden people were driving like a bat out of hell. Like it didn't start overnight. This have been years of systemic infrastructure that has changed how folks looked at driving. When I was in high school, I remember I could not wait for driver's ed. Driver's ed was actually a class. I talked to my young people. I'm like, driver's ed was actually a course that was in high school. Over the years, because of funding issues, there were some things that got to be cut, right? And, you cut, and that was one of the things that went. Fast forward, we now have a generation of young people that never took driver's education. We're now reversing that by providing driver's education after school, right? Some young people have to pay out of pocket for a driver's education course, but it's completely now a separate course that young people have to take. We're now reeling from that. Our city is now looking at infrastructure, the bump outs, bike lanes. We're now changing our entire city infrastructure because of an issue. And now we have to figure out what are the ways around, because it's taken us so long to get there. As far as, what we're seeing right now, it's going to take some time to get back to having safe city streets. And so the city currently has a Vision Zero program. They're going to do education. It's going to be a multi-layer thing, and unfortunately, y'all, we're not going to be able to punish our way out of this. It's just not going to happen, right? So there's a multi-level approach that we're going to have to take that's going to involve each and every single one of us. It's going to involve education. It's going to involve talking to young people, getting community organizations involved, getting city level officials. It's going to take a myriad of things to get us back to having safe streets. And I know that we can get there. We just have to really be intentional about it. But it's going to take some time. And so I want folks to understand that are listening, that are watching, that it took us time to get here. It's going to take us a little time to get back to having safe streets. And that means it's not just a one-person solution. It's not just a one-layer solution. It's going to have to take every single last one of us. And I know that we can get there.
So one of the things the Modern Drive Neighborhood Association Facebook page has is maps of this neighborhood. So way back, Highway 175 didn't exist. Now it does. Now there's a new idea. How would that change in the future? So what's your view, Charlene, about 175 and this idea from DOT about redesigning it?
Yeah, I heard ideas about 175 and opportunity to bridge neighborhoods and get our neighborhoods back together. And there are people that on different sides that says, yes, I love that idea of bringing the neighborhoods together. Other people are like, listen, what goes on the other side of Washington Park, we want that to be their issue and we want to be safe on our side. At this point, for me, I want to hear what the residents have to say. I don't live in Martin Drive. I don't live in Washington Heights. I live in Merrill Park. And so that's not an issue that we're dealing with, right? However, I want to hear from residents of that this particular issue impacts. Do we know that there's certain things that have happened that have destroyed neighborhoods? Absolutely. Again, those issues are things that have taken years to develop. It's going to take some time for us to figure out what those solutions are. Is it going to be a one-size-fit model? No. Is it going to make everybody happy? No, it's not. And that's why, being in a position like this, I get an opportunity to hear different sides. I get an opportunity to hear how people feel about different issues, whether I think they're good or not good, right? It's my job to represent the people in District 10 and to hear what they feel about particular issues. So with that particular issue about 175, I'm looking to hear more. I'm not here to, have a position on it because I haven't heard what residents think and what residents want. And so I'm putting my position as I want to be able to hear what's going to be best for, whether they turn it into a boulevard, what that's going to cost, whatever the situation may be. I want to be able to hear more. And I'm glad we're having conversations about these really tough issues, right? Because there are other neighborhoods that had highways driven right down the middle and have destroyed them and that's one of the things with Milwaukee. You have the south side. I mean, we're very segregated. How can we move back to integrating our neighborhoods, integrating more, of our neighborhoods, because some do well that, have that integration and some don't. So this is a collective conversation.
Okay, Richard?
When the freeway was built, that's when I started to play in Washington Park and marvel at that concrete. And my dad would say, that's how we got to work. I'm afraid that when this gets developed, they'll be asking a lot of subsidies. Now, you can go to Miller Parkway in West Milwaukee, how that was redeveloped. For years, that was blatant, and that was redeveloped. Do we want a McDonald's over here? A drugstore? A car wash? No, I don't. If private developers want to come in and put in a commercial establishment and pay a property tax right away, yes. Multi-unit housing? Do you want big complexes with hundreds of people to live in it? I don't know. I'm sure the Milwaukee Brewers will have a big say in it. I'm sure they'll have their foot in the door. They bought the recycling plant next to their parking lot. They did not tell Milwaukee was not aware of that. They bought that for their own private development when the Brewers were asking for help, where we have to give the Brewers $64 million from the sales tax. It was not known that they bought that private property for development. Will some other company or corporations come in over here and develop it? I hope they will, but at their own expense. But I'm not for a McDonald's or a fast food joint to come in there. If there's any help the city can do, yes, but financially, we can't afford it. Maybe it's going to stay like that for another 10, 20, 30 years, where the Department of Transportation say we have to tear this down and make it smaller. Can we build houses over there, single-family homes? Who would want to live there? I don't know. I'm afraid it's going to be large complexes of multi-family units. Thank you.
So, Richard, this next question. An alderman or alderperson would be on several committees. So whether that's selected by the Common Council president or someone else or negotiating, what 3 committees do you think you would want to be a part of?
The 15 would vote amongst themselves on who would be selected. Public Works, my 34 years of service for the city of Milwaukee. Zoning, that's very important. Zoning in neighborhoods. The third one, that could be up in the air. Any committee I would like the pleasure to serve. I think my years of city service, born and raised in this part of Milwaukee, I stayed here, retired, I stayed. I have one neighbor that I grew up with from my old neighborhood on the other side of Washington Park. He was a high-ranking official at City Hall. I won't say what he did. My neighbor. He bought his house a year after I did, and I didn't know that. He's retired. He stayed. We're 2 left of our old neighborhood that I can think of that stayed in Milwaukee. Everybody has left. I have a cousin that's leaving this coming summer. She's leaving Milwaukee after living her whole life. She lives in Perez's Aldermanic district. She got tired of calling the fire department because of drug overdoses on her street on Greenfield Avenue. The fire department said, since we come here so many times, we're going to give you this Narcan. She says, I'm not doing that. That's your job. Our neighborhoods do need a lot of help. Any committee, I'd welcome any assignment that I would get. I think I bring some kind of knowledge throughout the city budget. I made recommendations to Tom Barrett for selling water to Waukesha, and he took me up on that offer when the concept with Oak Creek was to expire at midnight at a town hall meeting at City Hall. He took my initiative on that, worked on it for 2 years, got us to sell water to Waukesha. We need more revenue into the city of Milwaukee. Cannot rely on the water bill fees, wheel tax. What's going to be next? There was talk of a tree tax. Do you want to pay a tree tax in front of your house? When's it going to stop? Thank you.
Charlene?
Yes. So I've thought a lot about this, and as far as committees, and being they call it a freshman, right? You're fresh in, and the Common Council president decides. For those of you that don't know, decides what alders, chair, co-chair, member in what committee, and so I too, I'm here to learn. I don't come in knowing everything, and I think that's the beautiful thing about this position, and for me, because wherever I go, I'm going to make sure that I do well. And so, but some of the committees that stick out to me that I think I would be a really great member on, one of them comes to mind for me is public safety. It is so important for us as we're talking about building community, what that feels like and what that looks like. And a lot of that building community is what we do and what happens all the way down to the block, all the way down to each neighborhood. And so, understanding that we first build community, public safety means for me, do I know my neighbor? Do I know the person across the street by name, right? Do I know the person next door to me? Am I speaking when I'm coming out the house? Like, for me, that's the start of making sure that we all know each other, because, if things go on in our community, I can pick up the phone and I can call my next door neighbor and be like, hey, I saw something, going on outside. Did you? Right? And we're open to having that conversation. That's the start of what public safety looks like for me, knowing that we know each other. Also getting an opportunity to know the different businesses, know the different entities that are within our district. Either licensing committee gives me an opportunity to do that, get to know people. I'm a people person. So, it's natural for me to connect and have a natural connection to community and to people. I've spent most of my life doing that. Connecting with people, knowing people, getting to know people from different, whatever your political ideology is, right? Knowing that that's the beautiful thing about this country. We're all not the same. We have some principles that are very similar, but we're all not the same. And how do we learn from each other? How do we have conversations with each other, right? Knowing that I can learn from you and you can learn from me, and that shouldn't stop us from having conversations with each other. So licensing committee, public safety, licensing, and everybody wants to get on finance. Listen, I'm gonna throw my bid out there for that one. That's sort of the heart of our city, knowing where dollars are spent, understanding it, right? I don't have a finance background. That's okay, but it's not gonna stop me from learning, and it's not gonna stop me from understanding and making sure that I'm doing right for the constituents of District 10.
Okay. Next question is about crime. So, knock on wood, some neighborhoods are doing better than others. We want to understand how you as an alderperson, Charlene, would deal with neighbors concerned about crime, especially when they're calling you directly about their particular issue.
Yeah. When we talk about crime, I'm gonna go back to one of the things that I've talked about is as far as building community with each other, right? So number one, when we talk about public safety, crime, it starts with that. It starts with knowing who is in your neighborhood, building relationships with each other. That's the foundational level. We can talk about, we need more police. We could talk about that all day. But from where I come from and the work that I do, I know that policing isn't the end all and be all, right? Do we need police? Absolutely we do. Because if there's an issue, somebody broke into my car, I want to be able to call somebody, be like, hey, I need some help. Come over and help me, right? So yes, there is a space for police in our community. I think where we veer off a lot of times is we think that we have to saturate our communities with police in order to feel safe. Safety for me is knowing that I live in a community that we know each other. I live in a community that I don't see boarded up houses every other house that I go down. I live in a community that I can walk to the local store. I can bike to the park, right, and feel safe in doing so. That's where we have to begin to build community in a way that's safe for all of us. I need to know that if there is, folks, I live in Merrill Park, and, we have a particular store that, a lot of activity, and I've looked at that store. I've driven by, I've walked by, and one of the things that tells me, instead of saying, oh, you know what, we just gonna let them do what they do. No. I thought about, listen, drug dealers are not welcome in my neighborhood, and I'm going to make sure that I'm visible and that our community says we are taking back our communities. We're not afraid of the individuals that are here. I speak to the young people. I want my neighbors to speak to young people, right? It starts with an infrastructure that we understand that we live here. And I'm not expecting City Hall to do this work for me, that I know that I want to mobilize the residents in my neighborhood to say, we have an issue. What are we going to do about it? And can we get the support of the community liaison that's connected to our police station? Absolutely. But it's going to take all of us. It's going to take us moving in to say, you know what, we got some issues. Let's figure out collectively how to deal with that. So that issue really quick with that, particular store and those individuals. All right, we got a pocket park that finally, came up. We're going to start having events in that area. There's a development, an owner that bought a building that's going to have some stuff. We're going to be like, all right, we're going to have a block party over there. We're going to move into the issues. And I want that to happen across our community when we talk about public safety. I want us all to be safe, but I want us to understand that we have to do this together.
Okay, Richard?
Where I live, we have a neighborhood association. My neighbor called me and she says, I think a woman's being assaulted in her car in front of my house. Sure enough, she was. I says, yeah, we got to call 911. She says, should you go out there? No, don't go out there. Could have a weapon. Her purse was thrown out of the car and the car took off. No police response. We had her social security card or ID. Waited. No, nothing. Next day, I took the identification to the police. There was a carjacking in our district. Woman car was stolen at gunpoint, made the news. She called 911. Dispatcher said, go to the police district for a carjacking with a weapon. No police response. We have a shortage of close to 200 police officers to be fully staffed. There's priority calls. If a carjacking with a weapon is not a priority call, what other response will you receive? My neighbor's car was stolen out of the driveway. Both professionals work at the medical complex. The very next summer, they sold and moved. The neighbor on the other side of my house took his child to go to the car, took some packages down to his car, went up to get his little child and his wife who worked at the medical college. I live by the medical college. They were in his car trying to start the car. The next summer, they sold their house and moved. For that response, the police did show up, did fingerprinting. But for the other, they did not show up. It's a priority. If there's a person who was killed, all the police will respond. That could leave pockets of 10,000, 20,000 city residents without police protection. This 10th district has a corridor that goes out to the Milwaukee County Zoo. There's been time there's only one officer from Miller Park to the county zoo. One on a shift. because the rest of them are pulled to high crime. The new sales tax requires the city of Milwaukee to fully fund for more police officers and firefighters. We're being told what to do. Thank you.
Richard, this next question's for you. The candidates' approach to how they campaign, like, do they come to your door? Do they mail you something? Do they call you, text you? That's important. But then it's also important, if you're elected, how would you connect to neighbors?
For me?
Yep.
Oh. When I went and got my signatures, I did them all myself. You can go online at the Election Commission. You can see the applications of signatures that people that signed for me to run. I went door to door and personally told them what I wanted to do as an alderperson. I didn't want to hire somebody or have a friend, any other person to go door to door to get a signature. I went personally door to door. When I worked for the city, I had door to door complaints. I dealt with neighbors. And I'm grateful that the city of Milwaukee gave me the opportunity to work in the area where I lived in the 10th district. For 30 plus years, I've worked this area as an employee. I received complaints, followed up on complaints. As an elected official, I will not rely on mailings or to get on the TV for the 1 minute soundbite when there's a major crime issue and they talk. No. I would be engaged to go into the neighborhoods, to knock on the door. I would especially like to work with religious groups, neighborhood churches. We had a former alderperson, neighbors. His church is on North Avenue and across the street from the old Washington Park Library. He was an alderman, went back into being a pastor in his neighborhood, child care, engage in the neighborhood. It's groups like that that I would like to work with. Thank you.
Can you read the question again for me?
So the question is, you as a candidate connect to the neighbors.
Yeah.
And then if you're elected, how would you continue to connect to neighbors?
Yeah, one of my favorite. This is a really good question because this is the epitome of who I am as just an individual. So people that know me, when I talked about going into this position, they were like, "Oh my!" People have been waiting, waiting for me to run for office. But it was important that my children, I could spend the time with my kids, let them grow up and move on. Go to college, and I didn't have to oversight as much. You still got to do that when they're young adults, but not as much. And I wanted to make sure that the time was right. And this opportunity for me could not have been more right. Our district was redistricted. So we originally had Alderman Bauman, and Merrill Park was carved out and put into the 10th district. So the opportunity came at an opportune time. And I want to let everybody know I can't do this work by myself. That's not what this is designed for. Being an alderperson is being able to work with everyone. You will see on the people that had went out and got signatures for me, I wasn't the only one, because I wanted folks to also understand that, you know what, this is my friend. This is the person that I've known for years that is going out and doing this work, and I value her. And I want you to know that she's going to go in and she's going to do a great job for you. So when you see my signatures, you'll see a plethora of people. And I'm so honored to be able to have so many people that love me and that support me going into this work. And so when we talk about how am I going to be there for residents, it's just being able to show up, right? Am I going to be able to be in every place at every time? No, I'm only one person, right? However, I can build relationship with community leaders and neighborhood groups and making sure that I'm connecting with them and finding opportunity to make sure that I'm present and that they know that I'm visible. Alderman Murphy did an awesome job in making sure that he was connecting with people, that he got back to people. That was, people are like, "Oh, you got big shoes to fill." I was like, "Oh, honey, I'm a community organizer. That's low-hanging fruit for me." Connecting with people is not an issue that I'm going to have. Responding to people is not going to be an issue that I'm going to have, right? And I have one of my mentors that's in this room that have known me ever since I was a young person. I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. I'm standing on the shoulders of people that have been here before me. In order for me to be successful, I need you. I need you. I'm not going in to do this all by myself. I need you. And so I'm going to rely on the support of the residents and the constituents in my district, because your success is my success.
Okay, Charlene, this next question's for you. Now, there's three main groups that actually charter schools for what we call them charter schools. We have Milwaukee Public Schools, they charter schools. We have UW Milwaukee, they charter schools. And we actually have the city of Milwaukee, they charter schools. Now, what is your view when it comes to charter schools and actually running schools? Because essentially, those three groups help do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Education is a huge issue for me because, again, I mentioned earlier, I want to make sure that every child in the city of Milwaukee has access to a quality education. I honestly believe that, the city should do what the city does best, which is running a city. And I think that education should be in the hands of experts that can do that line of work. I'm not currently right now, I'm still learning. I'm still understanding, how issues move throughout the city, particularly as it pertains to education. I previously talked before about equity, about how it's important for our public institutions to get their fair share of dollars so that it can support young people. You talked about young people moving out of our public institution because, the fact of the matter is they haven't received their fair share. Funding has been cut. It just seems like funding get cut all the time, and our children suffer from that. And it shouldn't matter regardless of what neighborhood you live in, what home you grew up in. Every young person should be afforded an opportunity. So I'm going in to learn how, the infrastructure of our, the different entities that run schools. But in my opinion, I feel that educational institutions should be run by experts and people that have, just people that have the expertise when it comes to education.
Okay, Richard?
I'm in favor of all those three choices that you stated. The state of Wisconsin had to step in because MPS was holding on to too many buildings that were not fully occupied, and MPS did not want to sell them. The city of Milwaukee overtook that process of selling buildings. The old Peckman Junior High School is a housing complex, 37th Street School. There are many buildings that MPS cannot afford to maintain, that should be sold to developers if they want to put in housing, senior citizen housing, or a private or choice school. I'm in favor of that. There should be a mix. There has to be competition. It seems that MPS is too slow to move. That's why enrollment is down to 58,000. 10 years ago, 90,000. Parents made a choice where they want their children to be educated. We just had the state high school championship, Division 1, 2, and 3, boys, all religious schools. MPS used to have a very good athletic program. We used to be champions in Division 1. What happened? I understand the funding issue. Parents have to be engaged. Truancy. Sherman Park, the Boys and Girls Club, where truant students were picked up by police. There used to be 2 police officers that would be in charge of the city for truant. I don't know if that program still is running. But I'm in favor of those 3 choices.
Richard, before we ask the next question, I'm just making sure we remind the folks in online group that you can submit your question online. I'm also going to ask the audience in a moment after this next question. We're going to have a chance to go to one of you all and have one of your questions answered. So just think about that. Richard, the next question's for you. Think about infrastructure. My house is from 1905. You know, I'm like, okay, I'm fixing it up. I'm doing this and that. I got to keep working at it. I can't just wait until the whole house falls down. But then think about infrastructure. Infrastructure lights. We have number of outages according to WISN 12. They said there was 8 just recently. We have lead pipes we need to replace. We have to fix potholes, all these kinds of things. How do we manage all of that and also just keep it simple when it comes to we have to pay for it?
We have a streetlight fee on our bill. There was talk of a tree fee to be put on your service bill. Where's all the money going? When I started with the city of Milwaukee, it was beautifully run. Everybody, all departments, everything started to come down. I'd seen about the year 2007, 2008 with Tom Barrett. That was the beginning. We could sense it. The decline in services. The pension fund not being fully funded, which is, Milwaukee used to be in the top 10 public funded city pension system in the whole country, in the top 10. Sometimes we were number 2 out of 10. What happened? It was not fully funded the way the charter was set up. They changed the formula for the funding to be amortized over years, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. That's what it made it crash. That's what made the city of Milwaukee go to Madison with their handout saying, we need help. The city is being financially mismanaged. I cannot say how difficult it's going to be. I propose that the city budget for 2024 be frozen for 25 to get a handle on the sales tax, what's left over after the mandates by the state of Wisconsin that is imposing on the city of Milwaukee that we must do. What's left over is ours. From there, we can go forward. But we cannot act like we have a huge amount of money to spend whichever way the 15 alderpersons want. It's not going to happen. There could be a recession. People will not buy. Inflation's going up. Cost to the city of Milwaukee goes up. We should be buying in bulk with our local other units of government, salt trucks, police cars. Why can't we get together and consolidate and make one purchase to lower prices of fire trucks, police cars? In the 24 budget for this year, there was $1 million to purchase new police vehicles. An alderperson submitted that money be used for early voting, but submitted that the city could borrow $1 million, borrow with interest to purchase vehicles. Why? There has to be a limit on how the city funds and spends its money, or else we can, you want me to vote for your taxes? Vote me in. I don't want to. I don't want to raise your fees. We have a wheel tax. Where's the wheel tax going to go? On potholes. Is the wheel tax being used for potholes? It's supposed to be used for sidewalks and streets the way it was originally intended when it was passed by the city council. That money was to be used to subsidize. If you wanted a new sidewalk, you wouldn't have to pay the full cost, or an alley in your street.
Okay, time. Charlene, go ahead.
Yeah, man. We listen. We can sit here all day and talk about the issues that are going on in this city because there are many. There are many issues that are going on in the city. You asked about sort of just, you live in a home, and, I live in an old home too, and I love my old home. But I know that my old home have to have a little TLC, right? And it costs a little money to put, to put into my old home. But what we're talking about is evolution. The streets are different now because we don't have horse and buggy, right? Things have changed throughout throughout history of our community. Doesn't look the same that it did 10 years ago, 30 years ago, 50 years ago. Things have evolved. And with that comes the resources that are needed to keep up with our infrastructure, right? The interesting thing about, living here in the Midwest, we have snow. you all know after the snow goes, and we just recently had some, what it does to our streets. So you see the potholes and, you know, the infrastructure damage that has happened, and the cost to be able to maintain those sorts of things, right? We have to be wise. When it comes to what happens and how do we address those issues. Unfortunately, it's not a one-size-fits-all model. We went to the state to get an increase just so that we can keep up with city services. It goes back to at the state level where they have that surplus, we're begging for money that belongs back to this community. We shouldn't have to do that. We should be able to, with inflation and with rising costs to everything, our city should have the resources that it needs so that we're able to address the multi-layer issues that all of our communities are dealing with. There are a lot of competing priorities that are very important. How do we, again, have those conversations such as participatory budgeting, asking the community, what do you think? Because again, you know, with one district, their issues may be very different from another district, right? Based on where people live, work, and play. So we have to just get back to how do we look at the issues? How do we collectively look at solutions and not, you know, we can sit here, oh, such and such is not doing what they're supposed to be doing. We can sit here and talk about, oh, woe is me. My goal is to look at how do we collectively come together and spend our time looking at solutions, knowing that it's not a one-size-fits model.
Okay. Now it's time to go to the audience for a question. So just speak loud. My fault. All right, I'll go ahead and say it loud. I'll make sure I repeat it to Charlene.
To sort of get on a news topic here, the arts sector in Milwaukee actually drives more economic development in the state, more jobs, more financial input than the professional sports market does. The arts funding in Wisconsin rates number 50 out of the states in Wisconsin, the 50 states. So the state isn't willing to fund that sector. What do each of you see as a way that the city can step forward and do additional funding other than the minimal that comes from the Milwaukee Arts Board?
Yeah, that's a great question. I love the arts. I grew up in the Sherman Park neighborhood, went to the Boys and Girls Club. When I got older, I started going to the YMCAs and, you know, those, and even just within school, I went to Sherman Multicultural Arts School and, you know, just the programs that were there. Arts is so foundational. But you talk about an issue where it's just like, yes, that's important. And yes, we need more funding and more resources for that. But you know, you have a candidate here that's talking about, well, we need more policing. We got to put policing in, you know, we got to have, you know, more officers. So people are talking about what is important to them and how do we, when we talk about equity, how do we build out a budget, a city budget that is going to support a lot of the different initiatives that are important for a community to thrive. I love that, you know, particularly within our district, you can, you know, see art installations. You go to particular areas and, you know, you have arts organizations that are doing really incredible work, but they need support. Our city should be able to, within our budget, be able to support that as well. But I think, you know, I go back to that organizing, it's going to take people to start to share. These are the things that are important to us. This is where we should be spending our dollars, because if we're building healthy communities, it has a makeup of all of those things. And the arts is definitely one of those components, but it's one of the ones that if we need anything cut, it's going to be one of the first to go, unfortunately.
Okay, Richard.
Art Gallery Night. It's 4 times a year, Milwaukee. All the art galleries open up their doors free of charge to attend. Did that for many years with my wife and my sister-in-law. There could be more involvement with the city of advertising for gallery night. Harley Museum, the Grotman Museum, the museum at Marquette University, hotels had art galleries, the Third Ward. All over the city of Milwaukee, art galleries participate. There's pamphlets that are in the public library and public places of all the different events, Friday and Saturday, 4 times a year. There could be more involvement with the city to advertise that. Maybe put a sign on the garbage trucks and recycling trucks, art gallery night, for people to participate, to get more involvement from art galleries. As to using taxpayer money for that, I don't know what the budget is currently, where the money's going to come from. That's something that the elected officials, the most number one job is to vote on a budget for the city where the money's going to go. Where's the priority? But for art gallery, yes, I do support it. I did gallery night for many years. A lot of fun. The trolley, they have trolley rides, free of charge. You could hop on a trolley, go from the Third Ward all the way to the north side, Brownsville, all around the city. Great. Did it for many years. Thank you.
Richard, and everyone, we have one more online question, then we have time for one more audience question. We're also going to keep encouraging the discussion online so both candidates can also participate. We're trying to limit this, right? About an hour, we also said we can't do a marathon, it's realistic, right?
What a half marathon.
Right. So the question online talked about like a forward vision. Like many groups talk about, outside of Milwaukee, talk about Milwaukee doom and gloom and negative this and that and crime and everything else. What's your forward looking vision for Milwaukee?
For me, when we talk about a vision, my vision is to have more companies that want to come into the city of Milwaukee to create jobs, but without a subsidy. We had a great company. It was Ma Bench on Locust Street, a herring company. And the woman that owned it was a certified public accountant. She hired people that came out of prison, gave them a job. That company closed. The city could have came in and helped her out, but she closed, sold it to another company out of state. There are successful small companies that could have help. That I am willing to do. There used to be 3 butcher shops on North Avenue, between 34th Street and 45th and North Avenue, 2 bowling alleys. There's the furniture companies, German imports, all these, all gone. All gone. What do we get left? A couple gas stations. I don't like gas stations in neighborhoods, especially convenient gas stations. They get burned down when trouble happens. But for my vision, I wanted to make it more affordable for people to live. When we have the highest sales tax in the state of Wisconsin, 7.9%, 7.9, the highest in the state, should never have happened. State has a surplus. I just don't understand last year why we didn't fight harder for more money. The state created state shared revenue over 100 years ago. They knew back then in horse and buggy, you cannot have a community that has a higher sales tax. People will move. They knew that back then. The state has a surplus. It's our money. They take it. They don't give back our fair share. There should be more cooperation with our other local cities and governments around the city of Milwaukee to be collective, to go after Madison. We need that money back. If you're going to take it, give it back. Don't have us create a sales tax and tell us we have to hire more police and fire, or give the Milwaukee Brewers $69 million. They were so willing to come in to help the Milwaukee Bucks, so quickly to come down there. We tore down a city parking garage that created funding for us. Funding from the parking garage. We had to give a new garage. We lost our hotel city tax in 1994 when the Midwest Express was created. We were told by the state, you have to give up your city hotel tax, which went to the city treasury to reduce our taxes. We keep giving up. We don't fight back hard enough. Thank you.
Charlene.
Yeah. I envision a Milwaukee that people are connected, that we know what building community looks like because it's something that we've always done. This isn't new for us. I envision a place where folks can work, play, reside, and want to be. That's something that has to be created intentionally. That means that we have to support homeowners. We have to support, more than anything, we have to really come down on those landlords that own property, that are not taking care of them, that put people in, that are, and they don't even, there's no oversight, right? We have landlords that live outside of the state, that just, they collect their rent and that's it. They have no ties to this community. I want to make sure we get back to people that care about living in Milwaukee. On the other side of this wall, I was actually sitting down with Miss Fern from Kothi Dance, founder of Kothi Dance Company, and a question was asked, in one word, how would you describe Milwaukee? And I couldn't necessarily describe it in one word, but I said, it's a great place. And Miss Fern added, in transition, because we know that things are different. 20, 30, 50, they were different that time. We're living in a new era, and we have to be able to move with the times. One of the reasons that we're coming into a lot of the issues is because we have a state legislature that think of Milwaukee as the evil stepchild, right? That don't want to give Milwaukee its fair share. So it's hard to combat individuals that don't live here and that still don't see that we deserve the fair amount of resources to make our communities safe places, to make people want to live here. We live in the Midwest, and guess what? People are going to start coming back to the Midwest because of where we sit. We sit along the Great Lakes, and trust me when I tell you, we're going to have more and more people moving to the Midwest because we're a great place to be. And I want you all to understand that it's not just going to solely take city government to transform the vision that we have for our communities. It's going to take every single one of us. And I want you all to know that we have to collectively do it together. I'm willing to be that individual to be able to collectively move our communities into a place where we're doing it together.
Okay. We have the final question from the audience.
What do you think of the eco programs that the city of Milwaukee has developed in that office?
Yeah. I'll be brief, but as far as when we talk about the sustainability programs, the eco programs that you're referring to, we have to move to that place where we're looking at sustainability for some folks that, and it starts really with education. For some folks that have driven in particular places, you'll see, you see these rocks and these infrastructure pieces that are called bioswales that are situated in a variety of different places throughout our city to help with our runoff water and our rainwater, so that we're not, so that water is going back into like our plants and instead of going into Lake Michigan, and so that was an education piece for me. When people start building new infrastructure, we have to have policy that, talks about how are they building those spaces so that when we look at new spaces, because, we're living in old homes, right? So, some people are doing some different things, putting on solar, doing just a variety of things, so that we can look at sustainability and what that looks like for future generations. Government has talked about, electronic cars and moving away from the resources that are damaging our communities, right? we're in different times. Things that were working, back then, we've realized like they've taken a toll on our environment. So when we talk about, I've even gotten into gardening, now, and a lot more people are learning how to grow their own food. But I think a big part of it is, number one, providing that education, because a lot of people aren't aware of some of the programs that the city is doing when it comes to sustainability. So we have to look at that education piece. How can we inform more individuals of the initiatives that the city is doing and how they can just simply be educated around it? But we have to, there's no other way for me to say it, but we have to move into that sustainability world in order for our communities and our world to be in a better place.
Okay, Richard?
Good topic. This one could go on for a very long time. Remember the ash boxes when you used to have recycling in the city? Your old ash boxes where you put your glass in your cans and the city crews would come on a shovel and shovel it out and they recycle that? That was stopped by Henry Meyer. We used to burn garbage in the city of Milwaukee at the Lincoln Yard on 38th and Lincoln. Used to be twin stacks. Used to burn garbage. No more. 90% of the plastic that you put in your recycling is thrown away. The Plastic Institute recycling just came out a couple weeks ago that a lot of that plastic is not being used. Do you want a fee for that for the recycling truck? It used to be a fee on companies to pay for the recycling. That was created by former Alderman Brian Burke. Before Mr. Murphy, Brian Burke was the alderman. I campaigned for Brian Burke to be an alderman. There was a state fee on business to get the funding for the recycling. I don't know how the funding's going now. Preston Cole used to be in charge of that. Preston Cole is now Department of Administration for the city of Milwaukee. And I asked him at a budget meeting the cost. And this was about 6-7 years ago. We were breaking even. What we got back in fees for recycling, breaking even. I believe it's going to tip where we're going to have to subsidize recycling. Deep tunnel sewers. We have cross-connected sewer pipes in Milwaukee. That should have been the number one goal before the deep tunnel. Henry Meyer made a mistake with the sewer wars with the suburbs to have them help fund the funding for the sewer. And then for them to hook up to send their sewage to our plant so we could treat it. We're the number one polluter of Lake Michigan, Metropolitan Sewage Commission. The deep tunnel had to be relined in Pigsville, where it goes underneath I-94 by Miller Park. That deep tunnel was cracking. Red Star Yeast had a well water 1,000 feet down that they used to cool their tanks. Environmental Protection Agency said you cannot use that groundwater, which did not come in contact with the food source. They just use it to cool the tanks. That account was $1 million to the Milwaukee Water Department. They're gone because they were buying water from us. They said it's too expensive, we're out of here. Lead pipes. Up until 1968, the city of Milwaukee required the lead code for lead pipes to be 3 times the state code for plumbing. 3 times. Some of these houses have a lead pack that's 3 inches thick because they were worried about leakage and losing revenue to the water department.
Okay, time. We would like to thank the candidates for coming this morning for this event. It could be nighttime, daytime. You're going to be able to see this video anytime you like, starting now, right? The mission of the Modern Drive Neighborhood Association, through programs and projects, will embrace and foster a sense of belonging and common purpose, resulting in a neighborhood that is beautiful, diverse, secure, and fun for everyone. We hope today that this is the first of many events you would attend as alderman, alderperson for the neighborhood. Now, I would like to thank the Washington Park Media Center for their tech support.
Thank you all. Thank you all for being here, guys.
Yep.
Appreciate you.
Being a true neighbor, because I'm down the block, right? And we appreciate this neighbor for helping us out. I would like to also thank Pat, Arlene, Charlotte, Wes, Rachel, Sharon, all the other neighbors.
Sarah.
Sarah, exactly. She's virtual, but she's helping out.
She's been moderating online.
Yep, thank you. And helping with tech support, with me this morning. With submitting questions, we thank those neighbors in addition. We remember that the discussion continues online. So both campaigns, you're able to answer questions online. You all, if you did not have your question this morning answered, you can go right to that YouTube link, put your question in. One of the campaign folks here this morning can also get on and answer that question. Election day is April 2nd. April 2nd, early voting has started. So I said earlier, just go right to 60th and Capitol, for example. Washington Park Library, just for early voting. You can call 414-286-VOTE. Get more information. If you have a question about how to register, you can do that again at the library. Thank you for watching.
Also, thanks to Teddy and Jonathan on the cameras and the Washington Park AV Club. And thank you from Washington Park Media Center to our neighborhoods around Washington Park and the Martin Drive Neighborhood Association. Thank you all so much. Thanks, Raymond, for moderating as well.
Thank you.
First live stream. Not bad. And thanks to everybody watching online. We appreciate you. Be sure to like and subscribe. Everybody should like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Washington Park Media Center. There's going to be a lot of content coming out. We love you all. See you on the flip side. So much fun. Look at us. A wonderful neighborhood. Piece of cake. 5-camera live stream. Who would have thought? A neighborhood center. Used to be a bakery, a saloon, a grocery store. Now it's a media center.